All right, guys, so I've stated 1,000 times on my channel about these Democrats, right? These darn Democrats, okay? They really do believe that their voters are dumb. And that is what offends me about Democrats, okay? Because listening to them talk, especially about the topic of economics or any legislation that they're pushing that has to do with the economy, is like listening to Andrew Tate try to sell you his courses. That is what came to the top of my mind because I just did a video about Andrew Tate. But I'm just saying, it's like listening to a scam artist, okay? That is what I'm saying, okay? It's like listening to somebody try to sell you a scam. You know it's a scam, but they try to make it sound good, right? They try to make it sound good, even though they can't articulate exactly what they're selling and how what they're selling is going to do what they claim that their selling is going to do. That's how you describe the recently signed into law Inflation Reduction Act.
As soon as the act goes into effect, I hope that all of the provisions will begin to work. I know that those who've been blaming President Biden for the inflation going up are now giving President Biden all the credit for inflation going down. So we're moving things in the right direction already.
And what parts of the bill do you think will quickly work on that specifically?
Next question.
But let me ask you, it's called the Inflation Reduction Act. But the Congressional Budget Act Office, which is nonpartisan, said that there would be a negligible impact on inflation this year and barely impact inflation at all next year. I mean, isn't it almost Orwellian? How can you call it Inflation Reduction Act when the nonpartisan experts say it's not going to?
So I appreciate that. I appreciate the question. We've actually addressed this, the CBO. It was the top line number. There's more in there that shows that it will have the money remember how we're doing this too. It's making sure that billionaires in corporate America are paying their fair share, making sure that that the tax code is a little bit more fair. And so when you do that, when you put it in its totality, you will see that it will bring down, lower the deficit, which will help fight inflation. Look,
Democrats titled this bill the Inflation Reduction Act, which begs, of course, for voters to hold you all accountable to that. The Congressional Budget Office, you know this, but to remind viewers, the Congressional Budget Office, the nonpartisan kind of scoring organization for legislation, says that the bill would have negligible impact on inflation this year and next. Are you personally comfortable as an economist calling it the Inflation Reduction Act?
So this bill represents really important investments we know we need to make that help to expand our economic capacity. Inflation happens when we have too much demand for the supply, and we know we need to be investing in the supply support so that we are better able as a country to address issues like inflation going forward. So this will increase our economic growth, and because of how we plan to implement it and provisions in the bill, that growth will be more equitably shared.
But if you passed a bill called the Fill Every Pothole Act, I mean, voters should expect you to fill every pothole. I mean, so should voters measure the success of this bill on how much you reduce inflation in the next couple of years?
So this bill spins out over several years. And so the tax provisions, for example, some of the tax revenue will happen immediately. Some of the benefits in terms of deficit reduction will materialize over time. So again, this is really an investment in our economy. It represents the president's economic vision for transitioning to an economy that works better for American families by generating the kind of growth that's based on stable, steady productivity gains, in the language of economists.
AKA, it's not actually an inflation reduction bill. It's actually just another Democrat tax and spend bill, right? That's what it is. That's what it is. That's exactly what it is. None of those people clearly articulated how the so-called Inflation Reduction Act was actually going to lower inflation because, they never intended for the legislation to actually lower inflation, and they feel like they played their base, right? That's what they feel like. That's how stupid they think that the Democratic base is. If I was a Democrat voter, honestly, I would be ashamed to go out here and vote Democrat knowing how stupid they think I am, right? They think that they can literally name a bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, can't articulate at all how it's supposed to reduce inflation, and then expect you to say, oh, well, this is an accomplishment, right? They're actually doing something about this problem. Wow. Incredible stuff. Incredible stuff. So that being said, we got to talk about a Democrat who is being ruthlessly mocked for exactly what I've been talking about here, thinking that her base is dumb. And this Democrat in particular is not just a regular Democrat, she's a progressive, a woke progressive, Miss Nina Turner, right? Who made an absolutely insanely ignorant claim about student loan cancellation that shows why people like her simply do not belong in Congress. But before I get into that, we have to have a word from the sponsor of today's video, Noble Gold. Wow, how about this? Noble Gold, one of the sponsors of our show, has just been picked by Consumer Affairs, the rating agency, as the #1 gold IRA company in the US. Talk to the team today if you're thinking of precious metals. And if you're quick, they're giving away an incredible 1/10 ounce American Eagle gold proof coin with every qualifying IRA or 401k rollover. You can't go wrong with Noble Gold. Call the team now on 877-646-5347 to find out more, or visit noblegoldinvestments.com. Let's get into Nina Turner, who I've mocked right on my channel quite a few times because she's like the Beto O'Rourke of black women, right? Black women politicians, that is. She continues to run for office thinking that people agree with her and that she's actually going to get elected when she's not, right? She's supposed to be this big progressive powerhouse. All the Democrats, all the politicians, the establishment Democrats, establishment politicians, that is, they're supposed to be afraid of Nina Turner because she's going to come in and, you know, cause a progressive earthquake. However, she can't win. She can't win in her own district in Ohio. That's the state that I believe. Okay. And tweets like this, displays of ignorance, economic ignorance, is probably why voters are not sending Nina Turner to Congress. Again, as she was mocked for a bonkers claim that student loan debt cancellation isn't paid for by taxpayers. Yes, she actually said this. So let's read about this. Former Democratic congressional candidate Nina Turner was mocked for absurdly claiming that student loan debt cancellation isn't paid for by the taxpayers. FYI, student debt cancellation isn't paid for by the taxpayers. The federal government is the lender. It's costlier for the government to hold on to the debt. Guys, this is exactly why I say that you should have to take a financial literacy test to be able to represent the American people in Congress. You at the very least should know the basics of what you're talking about before you can write legislation. This is a prime reason why Nina Turner does not seem to understand that the federal government is funded by the taxpayer, right? And any tax dollars that are printed by the federal government in excess to the point where it's debt are tax dollars that are coming from future generations of America, right? You're borrowing against the American public, right? So every dime that the government spends is off the backs of a taxpayer, regardless of whether or not we actually have the money or not. We're borrowing the money, which means the money is being borrowed from the American people in the future, right? And we pay interest on that, okay? Now, in the case of student loans, the federal government borrows money from the people, the taxpayer, like me and you, and gives it to students who want to go to college to pursue a higher education degree, okay? Like an investment. Now, those students are expected to pay the government back, aka the taxpayer back with interest, right? So student loan debt is one of those things that the federal government may or may not make money off of, okay? There's debate about whether or not the federal government's actually making money off of student loan debt, right? But again, the point is that the borrower is supposed to pay the taxpayer back for borrowing the money. And if the government decides to just forgive it, aka wipe away the debt, essentially what you've done is that you've just stolen from the American people, right? You've just stolen from the taxpayer. Taxpayers who didn't even benefit from it, right? You have plenty of people that paid into the system, that paid for this student loan debt, that did not even attend college, or that even paid off their student loans. So you're advocating for theft, right? That's what you're advocating for. Because you have people out there who made bad decisions about where to go to college and how much to pay to go to college to get certain degrees. You want to pay off their debt. A lot of the people that are benefiting from this are not just people who made bad decisions, but there are people who went and pursued degrees that tend to cost a lot of money because they're professional degrees, like medical degrees, engineering degrees, or whatever, right? And they make a salary and they can pay it back. They're the ones that are going to benefit the most. The rich, right? The working rich. So that is who Nina Turner is advocating for here with her ignorance, right? And she rightfully got mocked for it, okay? As Corey A. Angelina says, who funds the federal government? Jonah Goldsberg says, and we all know the federal government gets its revenues from the planet Zatu. Adam Baldwin says, what is a taxpayer? Ilya Shapiro says, can't wait for the federal government to pay my taxes. Can you guys believe that Nina Turner was a college professor? A college professor. Again, she can't be this dumb. I refuse to believe she's this dumb. She just thinks that her followers are this dumb. That's what it is. That has to be what it is. And where does the federal government get its money to lend? It's a mystery. It's a write-off. You just write it off. Greg Price says, where does the federal government get their money, Nina? T. Beckett Adams says, so that's where the money from all those federal bake sales went. Sebastian Gorska says, and the federal government is funded by. Nick Frieda says, wow, what a relief. Hey, real quick, before you go, where does the federal government get the money from? Carrie Lucas says, brilliant. The federal government can always just print more money. What's the big deal? Am I right? But one thing I don't get, if it's costlier for the government to hold on to debt, why are the feds hiring an army of IRS agents to shake down people for possibly owing back taxes? Yeah. Nick Searcy says, hi, silly. How does the federal government get money so it can be the lender? There must be an adult nearby. I can tell you. Yeah, man. I really don't understand, bruh. I really don't understand, bruh. I really don't get it. These are the people that are trying to run for government office that don't even understand the basic functions of how government works, right? And they want you to vote for them. And then when they don't get elected, the excuse is, well, you're a racist, right? You don't like black women. You know, in her case, she blamed the dark money groups, right? It's the dark money groups, right, that are funding her opponent. Okay? Again, it just blows my mind how ignorant some of these politicians are when it comes to the subject, particularly the Democrats when it comes to the subject of economics and guns, right? It's almost like, wow, you people don't understand anything. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a black conservative perspective. Peace.